Ready for more bodhicitta? Alright. We're doing pretty well timing-wise, so we'll try to do some meditation and open up for discussion too, because I know a lot of you have been practicing it for a long time, so it's useful to share and find everyone can learn from your experiences. All right. So before the break, we talked about the sevenfold cause and effect method for developing bodhicitta. Right? Bodhicitta, the most joyful mind, the most pure mind, the most expansive heart. And the sevenfold cause and effect was developing bodhicitta through first generating equanimity and attractive love, right? Seeing all beings as attractive, and then generating love and compassion, and then bodhicitta from that. Yeah. So this afternoon we'll cover the Shantideva's method of equalizing and exchanging self and others. So in this method, it really, gets out that self-centered mind that, usually translated as self-cherishing, but I have a mixed feeling about the word self-cherishing, because the idea is, cherishing oneself excessively, over cherishing, not to imply that we don't cherish ourselves at all, right? We don't love ourselves at all. We don't care about ourselves at all, right? We need to have love and compassion for ourselves in order to develop a healthy relationship with bodhicitta, and a healthy way of cherishing others. So the main point is that excessive preoccupation with oneself is a cause of suffering, right? Excessive, self-cherish or self-centeredness kind of thing, right? Seeing everything through my perspective, right? And what I want and what I need. That's the source of all of our suffering, according to Buddhism. All right, so the method, the Shantideva method of equalizing, exchanging self and others, right, involves cherishing others more and more and being less concerned about me, right? Not centered, right, in our mind, not everything being centered around me, but it's more of a Chögyam Trungpa used to call it like environmental generosity, like helping because it's needed rather than through the lens of me, because that person will like me, or that person will think well of me, or that will help my relationship with that person. Right? All right. So the idea is cherishing others the way that we currently cherish ourselves, and cherishing ourselves the way we currently cherish others. So cherishing others more and oneself less, or oneself in the context of countless beings, right? All right. So from the handout on page 9, I'll just read some of Shantideva's quotes because they're so beautiful. Whoever wishes to protect himself or herself and others rapidly should practice the secret instructions, which consist of exchanging oneself and others. All happiness that exists in the world arises from wanting others' happiness, and suffering that exists in the world, all suffering that exists in the world arises from wanting one's own happiness. And Geshe Sherab changes this a little bit, which I like, is, I don't remember exactly the wording he uses, but arises from wanting primarily one's own happiness, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting one's own happiness, but primarily one's own happiness. What need is there to say any more? The childish work for their own welfare, and the Munis or the Buddhas for the welfare of others. Look at the difference between the two. One's happiness and the suffering of others. If one fails to exchange them correctly, one will not reach Buddhahood, and samsara will be without happiness too. Yeah. So before we actually get into the method, the meditation on the 5 steps, Lama Tsongkhapa brings up certain points that Shantideva brings up in his Bodhisattvacharya Avatara. First of all, he talks, he addresses objections we may have of, cherishing others, primarily, and cherishing ourselves less. One objection is, that sounds too hard. Right? To put it. Or impossible, right? To put it in plain English. And Lama Tsongkhapa talks about how you can everything becomes easier if you become familiar with it, right? So he gives this example, and I don't totally resonate with this example, but he talks about how, some difficult person, some enemy, initially gives rise to fear in our minds. But through familiarity, we can become close to that person and then hold them dear, and then at a certain point we'll even be sad when they're away. And I don't know that I have that personal experience, but the idea is, right, just through familiar. I mean, and maybe a more resonating kind of example is a stranger, right? Someone is a stranger initially, and then, right, let's say you fall in love with them, and then you marry them, and right, and it becomes, right, from like indifference through familiarity, you develop strong love and strong attachment, and you miss them when they're away, and maybe you can't even imagine life without them at a certain point, right? And that's through familiarity, right? From not knowing them at all, and not missing out, right? To, right, feeling like you can't live without them, right? And that's just a matter of familiarity, familiarizing yourself with the, thinking of them positively. So we can get used to, so similarly we can get used to, through familiarity, cherishing others more and more, and oneself less and less. He says, he quotes a text, I forgot to write down the name of the text, but he says, "Do not avoid things because they are difficult. By the strength of familiarization, one whose name was frightful to hear will make you sad, even if he or she is away. And it is not all that difficult to posit my body as that of others." So we can cherish others' bodies, right, as we currently cherish our own. And so then there's this doubt of how would I generate, right, a sense of caring about others' bodies as much as I currently care about my own body? And Lama Tsongkhapa, brings up the example of how this body is actually comprised of this, our father's semen and our mother's egg, right? This body actually is completely comprised of elements of other, right? The semen, the egg, and then air that we breathe from the outside, and then the food and drink, etc. But through familiarity, we call this my body, and we consider this my body or me, whereas actually it came from totally non-me elements. Yeah. So through familiarization, we can learn to think of others' bodies as important as our own. Okay. So another obstacle is so the idea is to cherish others as we currently do ourselves, and cherish ourselves as we currently do others. And Lama Tsongkhapa brings up this point. It doesn't mean that I'm thinking you guys are me and I'm you, kind of thing. Like, yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So then there are these two obstacles to cherishing others as we currently do ourselves, etc. So there's this obstacle we have of thinking, or we may have this obstacle of thinking of ourselves and others as being fundamentally separate. You're separate from me, you're distinct from me, so why would I cherish you? And the Lama Tsongkhapa really brings up the emptiness teachings at this point. And it's like you think that there's a self, inherently existent me that's separate from other, fundamentally separate from other, like there's this concrete me and a concrete other, right? And we're separate, right? That's the way we normally think in our minds. But actually, it's just like thinking here and there, right? So the front door from where we sit now is there, and where we are now is here. And then when we walk over there, the front door is here, and right where you're sitting here then is there. There isn't an inherently here and there. It's just posited from a point of view. And similarly with self and other, actually, right, we're all arising from causes and conditions, right? We're not fundamentally separate from each other. There's one Lama who talks about, and I think I've brought this up before, how everything is like the water in the ocean. Everything exists like the water in the ocean. But what our concepts do are freeze things, like freeze self and other, like ice cubes floating in the water. Right? And so self and other are created by concepts, merely imputed by the mind, but created by our concepts. Self and others, we're not fundamentally separate from each other. Self is just posited from a particular point of view, but we're not fundamentally separate. Am I making sense? I mean, the subject of emptiness is so much more complicated than that, but just to put it in a simplistic way. All right. So, Shantideva says, through familiarity with the equality of self, others, and self, Bodhicitta grows stable. Self and other are related, as fictitious as that side and this side. That mountain is not that side by itself, depending on where it becomes this side. Depending on where it becomes this side. The self in itself is not established, depending on who it becomes other. Yeah. So, okay. So, removing the obstacle of oneself and others as being fundamentally separate or distinct is just, thinking that they're just different perspectives, different points of view, but they're not fundamentally separate. And then The second obstacle is removing the obstacle of thinking that since the suffering of others does not harm me, why should I make an effort to remove others' suffering? And so the examples or the refutation or the answer by Shantideva and Lama Tsongkhapa says, well, if that was the case, then the person who is young wouldn't need to take care of the body or save money for the old person, because the poverty of the old person doesn't affect the young person. Right? So why should I care about that old person? It doesn't affect me now, right? And so then a person might say, but that's the same continuum of right, in a person. So it will affect me. And then it said, well, also then the example of the hand wouldn't reach out to protect or take care of the foot, right? If the foot is injured, right, the hand, right, reaches out to protect and take care of the foot, right? So Shantideva says, well, if you're not like, right, the suffering of the foot doesn't affect the hand, so why then, with your reasoning, why would the hand reach out and comfort the foot? So the person who objects says, well, but that's in the same person, right? That's the same continuum. So that's a different example. That's different. That's not what I'm talking about. And Shantideva, and this is emptiness again. Shantideva says, well, the same continuum of a person or the collection is merely imputed by the mind. It's merely, right, the old person and the young person, right? They're not inherently the same, right? The continuum, there are many moments of body and mind, and we call, the young person at this point, we call it the same person as the old person. But what is the same inherently from its own side, right? The body is different when you're old versus young, right? The mind is different. So what is the same? It's not inherently, there's no inherent person at all. It's not inherently the same person. There's just, right, there are many different moments, and we link those together conceptually and call it the same person, right? All right. And then the same with the hand and the foot. We call it a singular person that has the hand and the foot. But once again, that's just a conceptual imputation. That it's a one person. It's not a person, right, owning the hand and a foot from its own side. Did that make sense? Okay. All right. So then next, we'll go through the 5 steps. So the first step being equalizing oneself and others, right? So this is similar to what we did with equanimity earlier, but in that we reflect on how others just want happiness, just as and don't want suffering. But in the case of equanimity, we were equalizing everybody with each other, right? Friends, enemies, strangers. In this instance, we're equalizing others with oneself, in that just as I want happiness and don't want suffering, others are equal, right? We're not more important than them. We all want happiness just as much as each other, right? Others want happiness just as much as I do. Others don't want suffering just as much as I do. And it's very useful to reflect on this from the level of feeling, right? That first of all, right, getting in touch with how much, we're driven by this desire to be happy and not want suffering, right? How on that feeling level, how much I want to be happy, how much I want things to go well for me, how much I want to be healthy and safe and cared about and treated well. And when we get that feeling sense, then we can easily transfer that to others and see they want that want happiness just as much as I do on this level, right? And that gives that sense of commonality and that shared experience, right? You can connect with the other person's kind of deepest desires more, and then you care about them. I think when we connect with people, right, on that feeling level, there's a sense of caring that arises, that just connecting with an intellectual understanding of, oh yeah, they want happiness and they don't want suffering. Okay, yeah, that's fine, right? But we won't necessarily develop a sense of caring from that. Yeah, good for them. So do I. Yes, no big deal, right? So yeah, so on the feeling level, it's much more impactful, right? Others want happiness just as much as I do. So why would my happiness be more important than anyone else's? We all want to be happy just as much as, anybody else. So why is anyone more important than anybody else? Yeah. And the Dalai Lama, right, he offers this reflection. Many of you probably have seen this before, where you imagine in front of you, like you're just an impartial observer, and you imagine in front of you yourself on the one hand, and then all other sentient beings over here, right? All of them want to be happy. Yourself wants to be happy and don't want suffering. All other sentient beings want happiness and don't want suffering. So, and then you ask yourself, does it make sense to cherish this one, right? And view that person's happiness as more important than that of 7 billion other people, right? And, right, countless other animals and beings, right? From a logical standpoint, from an impartial standpoint, right, does it make sense to cherish this one as more important than these countless others, right? And of course it doesn't, right? It doesn't make sense at all if we look at it that way, right? We don't normally look at it that way. But yeah, so that's one reflection that's very useful to do. So yeah, all right. Then the next step is to reflect on the disadvantages of this self-centered mind, the self-preoccupation, the excessive self-cherishing. So as we were talking about this morning, right? So from that preoccupation with me, what's going to happen to me, and my needs are more important than others, my wants are more important than others, like excessive concern about my success and my reputation and my security and my, getting what I want and, my stuff and, right, etc. That brings up a lot of fear, right? Anxiety, right? Fear of losing what I have, fear of not getting what I want, anger or annoyance or agitation when we don't get what we want, or when someone interferes with my, my agenda, or someone hurts me, someone mistreats me, someone is inconsiderate of me, is disrespectful of me, right? That holding on to me as being so important makes us agitated and upset, right? When this me, right, doesn't get what I want, when this me is mistreated, right? When this me is looked down on, or this me is dismissed, or this me is treated as if I don't matter, right? What do you mean, right? Right. So all of those mental afflictions, right? They upset the mind, right? They agitate the mind. They disturb the mind, and then we create negative karma, and then more unhappiness ensues in the future, and difficult circumstances ensue in the future, right? So if we really look, right, not just theoretically, but really look at our own experience, right, when we've felt the most unhappy, or when we've been angry, or when we've been upset, when we've been miserable, was there self-cherishing underneath there, self-centeredness underneath there, excessive self-concern underneath there? Yeah. So the idea is if we really look honestly, we'll find the self-centered mind underneath there. Yeah. So, where's my quote? So the idea is that all of the suffering we've ever had has been because of the self-centered mind, the excessive self-cherishing. Right? And that's something that we really have to reflect on ourselves, right? In order to gain conviction, like really believe that, and really to make that our own. And I think it's hard to really get that completely, right? I know that, right? The self-cherishing mind, the self-centered mind, really wants to preserve itself, right? And yeah, objects to this line of reasoning, objects to treating others as more important as oneself. Or, yeah. I'm trying to find the... Yeah, I mean, I find that the mind that justifies, right, that justifies anger, or justifies, speaking harshly to somebody, justifies negative behavior, right? Is that the self-centered mind? Is that the self-cherishing mind? Or is that the wisdom mind? So check out my hypothesis. What I throw out there is that it's the self-centered mind, the self-cherishing mind that thinks, I was right to do that. That person, yeah. Anyway.
You see that with the protesters, they express anger in their righteous protests.
Sometimes, yeah.
There's a difference between assertion and anger.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? We're not saying to be a doormat, and we're not saying to let, others treat us badly and all of that, right? But there's a difference, right? But when there's anger, right, we don't have to do it with anger. When there's anger, then there's the self-cherishing mind underneath there. if it's, right, just protesting injustice without anger, not necessarily the self-centered mind underneath there, right? But if there's a mental affliction, there's probably the self-cherishing underneath, the self-centered mind underneath. Oh. So, yeah, it's useful to contemplate that again and again and again. Because it's a deeply ingrained habit, right, to cherish ourselves as being the most important. And to overcome those habits is not an easy endeavor, right? And it requires really thinking about it, really contemplating it, really reflecting on it again and again, to see if it's really true that that self-centered mind is really the cause of all of our pain, all of our problems. And not finding the quote I'm looking for. Abunka Rinpoche says, "The thing that has brought us suffering since beginningless time in samsara is our own self-cherishing." I don't know if that sentence is impactful to you as it was for me. Like, it's such this absolute statement. The thing that has brought us suffering since beginningless time in samsara is our own self-cherishing. So, yeah, something to think about. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, "The self-cherishing attitude makes us very uptight."
Flashing forward to the 20th.
Right, yeah. We think we are extremely important, and our basic desire is for ourselves to be happy and for things to go well for us. Yet, we don't know how to bring this about. In fact, acting out of self-cherishing can never make us happy. Those who have the attitude of cherishing others regard all other beings as much more important than themselves and value helping others above all else. And acting in this way, incidentally, they themselves become very happy. Lama Yeshe used to say, so I hear, self-cherishing is like salt in the heart. Always a little uncomfortable. Right? So do you have that experience? I mean, I have that experience when the self-cherishing is in there. It's like, what about me? What about me? Pay attention to me. I hope you think well of me, right? And it's this uncomfortable, right? It's an uncomfortable feeling to have this, making sure that me, gets paid attention to or appreciated or, seen, understood, etc. Yeah. Okay. So once again, right, we're not saying that we should totally neglect our needs and, right, but the idea is not to cherish ourselves excessively as more important than anyone else. Yeah. What do you think about that? Do you believe that the self-centered mind, the self-cherishing, really is the cause of all our pain, all of our problems, all of our suffering since beginningless time in samsara?
It's hard to wrap your mind around it all.
Right, right. Yeah. And and His Holiness's quote that self-cherishing can never make us happy. That's another big absolute statement. Do we believe that here? Do we believe that here?
I'm facing a tiny little challenge. I've been invited.
Do we want to use the mic?
Oh, I don't think so.
Recording?
Yeah, because we're recording.
It's gonna be online.
No.
Talk into it though.
Maybe this isn't.
Talk it into it.
I hear you.
Ooh.
I'm supposed to fly to Los Angeles the day after Thanksgiving to participate in a memorial service. And I was very gung-ho about doing that when I made my reservations. And then my self-cherishing stuff has come up all along the way, like dealing with airports, dealing with the amount of people, dealing with the way traffic is now, having just experienced it a couple weeks ago in LA on the freeways, making my sister go through all of that because I don't drive those freeways anymore. She's going to take me there. And I'm piling up all the stuff against my going, but it all depends on me feeling comfortable. And I always keep in mind that little Vajrasattva book that Lama Zopa wrote. And I remember going, what? Huh? What's he talking about? When he said, every second we're looking for comfort. Mm-hmm. And then just noticing, even my moving my feet to get warmer. It's just that.
Yep.
Always. Okay, so, and I keep thinking, well, really, what would it matter to that family? They haven't seen me for years. Mm-hmm. But still, I am not going to be comfortable not going. You know what I mean? I'm just not.
Yeah.
So, but I'm also, I don't want to get sick, and I don't want to, this, that, and the other thing. Mm-hmm. I don't want the hassle. Mm-hmm. So, like, where's the wisdom here going on for me? And it's just maybe it's not black and white.
Yeah. No, it's not at all, right? I mean, it's so easy to say self-cherishing is the cause of all suffering. And so just let go of that. Lynn, let go of that, right? Right. Not so easy. Yeah. So you mentioned, how much like your mind has been agitated, right? Because of the self-cherishing, right? Well, what about the traffic and what, and this will be uncomfortable and that'll be uncomfortable and all that, right? So we can see that it's uncomfortable if we look at it, and yet letting go of that is not so easy. And we can easily justify, right? We can usually justify our self-cherishing, right? Okay, well, it's not. And let me say, I think it's very tricky to find the line between taking care of ourselves and overly cherishing ourselves, right? Like, what is healthy taking care of ourselves, and what is our self-cherishing that we're maybe just justifying? Yeah. And that we just have to be really honest with ourselves about, like, what is going on? Because I know for me, it's like when it comes to going out of my comfort zone, right, to help somebody else, or I'm tired and so I can't really be there for that other person, right? Is that self-cherishing, or is that taking care of myself? Yeah. Well, that's for us to decide, right? I mean, to really try to look honestly, about that. And the idea is to counteract the excessive self-concern, the self-cherishing mind, the self-centered mind, as much as possible, right? But then also not neglecting ourselves, and right? And I find that, I mean, this is an ongoing kind of open question in my mind, is if we're genuinely trying to practice cherishing others, you know, more and more, being there for others more and more, and our strength, right, and our joyful mind is going down, to me, that says, okay, that's going beyond your capability right now. And the wise thing to do is to take care of yourself so that you can build up your own strength and your joy so that you can be a benefit to others, right? Whereas there's a mind that looks very similar, you know, of, you know, I just leave me alone. I just want, right? I just want to I just need to be left alone for, you know, a few hours or for a day, right? And where I'm not really trying to overcome my self-cherishing, I just don't want to deal with you right now, right? That's more tricky in terms of, well, I suspect that's more of a self-cherishing that I could work on if I really want to, right? If I really believe in this teaching wholeheartedly, I would work on that, right? Like the Kadampa teachers are like, counteract that self-cherishing. Every single moment of that self-cherishing you counteract, right? Right? But for me, and maybe for many of us, sometimes we counteract it and sometimes we don't, right? Sometimes we just, yeah. So, I don't know that there's an easy answer to that. I think we have to be realistic, honest with ourselves and realistic about where we really are and what we really need without justifying kind of going overboard with the self-cherishing. Because if we justify the self-cherishing too much, we just won't make progress on the path,
Does it help to go back and think, what am I sure that this will help? You know what I mean? Is when you want to go there, is it so that you are the one who always goes, or the one who, which is self-cherishing in a different avenue, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not going because I imagined myself going into the memorial service and doing what I can do when I go into a room of strangers. And I'm thinking, it's so not wanted. What they want me to do is remind them of their mom. And I have a bad memory for anecdotes, weirdly. I mean, I can't do a lot of that. And they're there for themselves, their own family. I'm not part of their lives. I'm tangential. I write great letters, and that's probably why I was invited to, consider to speak. So it's kind of like, no, my self-cherishing would have, it was always me starring in that show going into the memorial service, And then I thought, no, it's not going to harm them one bit. I'm not there. And I'm going to write a great letter that they can share amongst themselves. They don't have to speak it.
Yeah.
So that's how I made a decision.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Yeah. And it's back to that question of, is it beneficial, right? Is it beneficial? Is it beneficial for them? Also, is it beneficial for ourselves, right? And trying to do whatever is most beneficial, right? The thing is with the self-cherishing, oftentimes it's the self-cherishing that prevents us from being there for other people the way they really need it, right? In your example, maybe it's not, right? Maybe they don't really need it. But oftentimes there are situations, right, someone just really needs to be listened to in the moment. Someone just needs to be comforted in the moment. Somebody needs you to be present in the moment or needs you to do something. And our self-cherishing is not able to do that, is preventing us from being able to do that. Yeah. So, no easy answer. Anybody else have a comment on that? Like, maybe the difference between self-cherishing and taking care of ourselves.
I'm not sure if it's exactly an answer to that, but I guess one of the things that happens for me is that I feel like I wholeheartedly want to do something and volunteer for it or sign up for a retreat that involves a lot of travel or maybe too much money or but it's something that I deeply want to do. And then I go back and time goes by and I go, what was I thinking? Or I can't do this. And I have kind of a visceral response, and I have a hard time dealing with that skillfully sometimes, where, I mean, if it's some things that you can just cancel, it doesn't matter. But there are other times where I've kind of gotten myself into something. This might be similar if it were similar, but and then I have to decide which way to go. And sometimes I wish I didn't have that wholehearted feeling to begin with. So it's almost kind of like trying to temper the original motivation so that it matches what I'm actually able to go forth with. Do you know what I mean? That sometimes I get too excited about.
Yeah, but is it that, right? I mean, I think it's interesting to look at the motivations for both. Like, what was your motivation for going, right? Was it wisdom or was it self-cherishing, right? What is your reason for not wanting to do it now? Because I find when my experience, it's the other way around, where it's like my original motivation for like wanting to go and do that long retreat was the pure motivation, right? That was like, that's what's really beneficial. Like following Lama Zopa Rinpoche's advice, that's what's really beneficial. Then there's my mind of, that's going to be so hard, and that's right. It's going to be cold, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be stressful, and right. So my reluctance to do it later is my self-cherishing, right? So I don't know what it is in your case, but that's something to really look at it. Yeah, yeah, and I find that oftentimes, right? Yeah. Right? Going, like, not giving into that, going out of our comfort zone is oftentimes the biggest growth. Right? And that's what Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or the guru, does for us over and over and over again, right? Encourages us to do things out of our comfort zone, encourages us to do things that we would not do ordinarily, right? We would not decide to do ourselves, right? And if I actually step up to it and do it, I always see that it's beneficial for me. It's uncomfortable. It brings up a lot of stuff, but it's always, in my case, it's always been beneficial, right? Whereas, staying in my comfort zone is perpetuating the habitual patterns, right? It's perpetuating my habits, and my habits have kept me in samsara, right? Right? So getting out of samsara, right? And overcoming the self-cherishing is very much going against the stream of our habits, going against the stream of what instinctively we want to do, right? So it's very good to purposely walk toward those things we don't want to do if it's beneficial, right? But, yeah. But, within our own capacity, right? I mean, diving into the deep end when you can't swim is, right, not a good proposition, right? So it's very much a gradual process of stepping away from the self-cherishing more and more, right? I find that the Dharma practice requires a lot of skillfulness, like a lot of wisdom, a lot of honesty, and skillfulness. How do you do it in a skillful way and not just, right? Oh yeah, I'm going to renounce samsara and I'm going to give up everything, and then it's beyond our capacity, right? And then we end up tripping and maybe walking, taking 10 steps backwards as a result. So understanding our capacity and kind of going gradually forward in the right direction, right? And we have to redirect again and again toward the cherishing others, overcoming self-cherishing, right? Because if we get distracted, right, if we get busy, we'll just fall back into our habitual patterns. Right? I've been reading this book called Altered Traits, which is really quite an astonishing, wonderful book. But it's researchers, scientists, doing research on the effects of meditation. And one study they did was they were, studying meditators, and when people were distracted, right, when they were distracted from their mindfulness, they were asked, kind of what kinds of thoughts arose, and the thoughts were almost inevitably self-referential. Oh, what I need to do. What does that person think of me? Or if we're, they're in the study, I wonder what they're learning about me. I wonder how I'm doing compared to others, right? Right? I mean, kind of our default, right, thoughts are all around me. What do they think about me? What's going to happen to me? What's going to make me comfortable? Ooh, what's that? What should I eat that will make me feel good? Or what, oh, maybe I'll go shopping so I can feel, I can feel happy, and, and oh, let's go to the warm place because, because it's sunny, because that will make me feel comfortable, right? It just, right? The automatic pilot is about me, unless our minds are very highly trained, right, in this equalizing, exchanging self with others, right, thinking about others more and more and more and more and less about ourselves. But it starts by really being convinced that, well, I don't know if it starts by being really convinced, but on some level being convinced that the self-cherishing is causing our unhappiness. And then the next step is to contemplate the advantages of cherishing others, the advantages of... Oh, wait, actually before... Yeah. Before I go to that, Lama Tsongkhapa talks about the need to put an end to self-cherishing by regarding it as the enemy. Right? So, really seeing self-cherishing as the enemy, the troublemaker, the source of all my problems. I'm on the bottom of page 11. Yeah. And then cherishing others, thinking about the mind that cherishes others. How, right, looking in our own experience, right, when we've completely been there for others, when we've, our heart has gone out to others and it's not been about me at all, right? The lightness and the joy that comes from truly being there for others, truly, and forgetting about yourself, right? How is it, right, in those moments when we've dropped the me, we're not thinking about the me, right?
Great.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful? And in the, in this book, I don't know if it's in this book, but I was reading recently, right? It's like those certain sports, right? Like rock climbing, where you have to be really focused in the moment, right? Or sports, really focused in the moment, and you're not consciously thinking about me, right? A lot of people are drawn to those kind of activities because they're like, you can't, right? You can't be safe, right? And think about the me, right? At the same time. Yeah. Right? And so we've dropped the burden or that heaviness of the me. I think, the self-cherishing, I kind of think of it as like we're carrying around this heavy load all the time, self-cherishing. And then those moments when it drops, it's like you let go of that load, and it's so light. It's so much nicer without carrying that big heavy thing. Geshe Sherem also says, with cherishing others, there's a much deeper level of satisfaction, joy, happiness, and confidence. Right? Deeper satisfaction, right? Like Lama Yeshe said, he has a quote he says, if you take a proper look deep into your heart, you will see that one of the main causes of your dissatisfaction is the fact that you're not helping others as best as you can. Right? So when we're really helping others, right, we're really putting our heart into helping others, there's a deep sense of satisfaction in doing that, right? It's much, we feel like, I'm really, we feel good about what we're doing with our time, right? We're feeling like, we're using our life in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. There's a self-confidence that comes from right, living our lives caring about others, right? We feel good about ourselves. And then when we're cherishing others, right, we make others feel cared about, make others feel like they matter, make others feel seen, right? Make others feel safe. And it's very healing for people, right? It's right. Just being with someone who loves you for the way that you are, right, is very healing. Right? And a lot of us need healing. A lot of people need healing. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, true happiness begins the moment you cherish others. True happiness begins the moment we begin cherishing others. Right, and then like the example I was giving earlier, just how much pain we have from think about me, I'm going through such a hard time, I have so many problems, me, right? And if we can just drop that and think about the others, like in my caretaking of my mother, I see that, when I start thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much electromagnetic radiation here, I feel terrible, I can't sleep, and then as soon as I think about my mom, and cherishing her, right, being there for her, then I'm happy, right? The more I go, poor me, what about my life, right? I'm miserable, but like, oh, yeah. How wonderful. I can be there for my mom. How great is that? Yeah. Right? In balance, of course. We have to take care of ourselves and take breaks and sleep and stuff like that, right? But in general, it just feels so, right? It feels wonderful when we're really there for somebody else. Worthwhile, right? We're living our life in a meaningful way. Like, yeah. Right? Making somebody else happy, being there for somebody else when they really need it. All right. Right, without imposing ourselves on the other person, right? When we impose ourselves on the other person is our agenda, right? Our self-cherishing, going, here I am to help you. And they're like, oh, thanks.
You're going to be so much happier if you do it this way.
Right. Oh, yeah. That one always goes off really well. Right, yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Like in helping others without trying to control them. Oh my gosh, that's a wonderful practice, right? Helping others and do what they need, right? What they need, not what I want to give. Ooh, that's a big practice, right? That's a big practice. It's easy to give what we want to give, but giving what they need, is another thing.
It took me years to realize that I didn't usually ask. I just grokked it. I was intuitive, and I thought, oh, and this will be the solution. It took me years to just ask that question of the other person. And then, of course, I'm disappointed when it's not what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tricky, right? It's so tricky helping others and letting go of the self-cherishing. And there was one, I heard Geshe share talk about self-cherishing in the sense of we think that we're right all the time, right? And I'm like, that's true. We're right. Right. And that's yeah, right. And that's a more subtle expression of that self-centeredness, right? Or I know what you need. Really. Yeah. Right. And when it's done to us, we're not so happy about that, right? But it's easy to do that to others. Like, oh, I know what you need. Here. So, okay. All right. So then, right, we contemplate again and again and deeply with our own experience the disadvantages of the self-centered mind or the self-cherishing mind, the advantages of cherishing others. And then the fourth step is the actual equalizing and exchanging ourselves with others. So changing our attitude, actually cherishing others as our primary and counteracting our self-cherishing as much as we can. And I don't know if I should read this quote, but I'm going to. By Geshe Sopa, because he's so brilliant and spot on. So he talks about, great practitioners do not use this mental spy, right? The introspection that checks up to see whether the self-centeredness is there or not. Great practitioners do not use this mental spy to investigate others. Right? They are checking themselves to make sure that a pure attitude is in place. They must know if deceitful or negative thoughts arise when they're dealing with others. Even though it may look as if we are helping someone, if the self-centered attitude is present in our mind, then we're just cheating ourselves and others. If we see something wrong, we have to fight it. He says constant, wrong in terms of the self-cherishing being there. Constant daily introspection is critical. We should face off against our selfishness and fight it with every possible method all the time. Benefiting others is our center. In other words, it is the heart of our practice. So so really being vigilant, honest and vigilant when that mind is arising, and then counteract it, right? This is not going to be an easy practice, right? I mean, you're all practicing it right now already. But, right, it's something that we need to be perpetually vigilant about. Otherwise, we take one step forward and 2 steps back and 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right? And we don't make much progress if we're not really determined, right, to overcome the self-centered mind. And then if we're not vigilant, if we're not checking up our minds throughout the day, as much as we can. And I notice, Lama Zopa Rinpoche talks a lot about Bodhichitta Mindfulness, about, right, when you open the door, think that you're leading all sentient beings to enlightenment. And, when you lay down to bed, thinking, like in all daily activities. And when I actually do it, confession time, when I do it, it really makes a huge difference. And I really see how I don't do it most of the time, right? And how much the mind would change if I did, keep that in mind all the time, and right. And when we're helping one person, we can think, we're supposed to expand our attitude, right? May I bring all the sentient beings to enlightenment, right? And expand our motivation, instead of just thinking about that one person, think that, so we can use all of our activities all the time to remember bodhicitta. Yeah. And, right, and enlightenment, right, progressing along the path is so much about purifying our old, right, negative habitual patterns, our old, right, our mental afflictions, our own negative attitudes, and practicing the positive ones, the cherishing others, remembering emptiness, those kinds of things, right? It's like this moment by moment purifying and accumulating, right, the positive. And there's nothing like bodhicitta, right, to purify the negative and accumulate the positive. And the more we remember it throughout the day, the more we're purifying and accumulating. Whereas if we just remember it right in the morning when we're setting our motivation for the day, and maybe at night when we go to sleep, right, there's all of this kind of missed opportunity in between where we're sometimes imprinting causes of happiness, and sometimes we're imprinting causes of more samsara and more suffering. Yeah. So then there's this actual equalizing, exchanging self and others. Yeah, which is, the mind training, right? The 7-point mind training and the 8 verses of mind training, constantly trying to train to cherish others more and more and overcome our self-cherishing. And then the 5th step is the tonglen, the taking and giving, right? Which we probably all have received teachings on that, right? Imagining, right? Taking away the suffering of others on the in-breath and giving happiness and goodness to others on the out-breath. So taking away their suffering is increasing our compassion, giving them happiness, good qualities, even our merit, right? Everything that we have, right? And it's a beautiful practice, right? Because it's the last thing that our self-cherishing wants to do is take on somebody else's suffering and pain, right? But, just through practice, it gets easier, and then we develop more and more courage, right? Strength of mind and courage. And if we ride it on the breath, throughout the day, how powerful is that? Yeah. Okay, did that make sense? That was the 5 points Shantideva method. We did the sevenfold cause and effect method. Any other questions or comments so far?
See, I need to drop the paper.
All right. Okay. So then the 11-point method for developing bodhicitta combines those two methods, right? And this is what's recommended, right? Lama Tsongkhapa put these, well, I haven't seen in the writings these exact 11 points, but Lama Tsongkhapa encouraged us to practice these two methods together. And then we take advantage of the benefits of both, right? So the first 4 steps, developing the equanimity, and then viewing all sentient beings as one's mother, remembering the kindness and wishing to repay the kindness, are from the sevenfold cause and effect, right? So we develop equanimity as the baseline, then we develop this attractive love by viewing all sentient beings as our mother, etc., right? And remembering their kindness, right? So we have this sense of warmth and affection toward all sentient beings. And then we pop over to the equalizing and exchanging self and others. So we equalize oneself and others and see that others are just, right, want happiness just as much as we do. We're not any more important than anyone else. And then we contemplate the disadvantages of the self-centered mind or the self-cherishing mind and the advantages of cherishing others. And then we have the actual thought of changing our attitude and cherishing others and overcoming or counteracting the self-cherishing. We do the Tonglen, and then we pop back to the sevenfold cause and effect and develop the extraordinary attitude. Right, so with the Tonglen, the taking and giving, right, we're developing great compassion and love in that singular practice, right? Taking away the suffering, right? I mean, first you reflect on the other's suffering, right? We reflect on, right, how much that person, right, or if the sick person, how painful that would be, right? So we reflect on the gross suffering, we reflect on the suffering of change, how, we are constantly experiencing what we consider happiness, but is actually just the suffering of change, right? That it's just, right, the good meal is just a temporary relief of the suffering or the discomfort of being hungry or dissatisfied, right? And then we think that that's the answer, but the satisfaction reduces, right? Right? The comfort that we experience when we eat is very temporary, and then we're looking out for something else to bring us relief from a temporary discomfort. Oh, call up a friend when I'm feeling lonely. Calling up the friend, right? Talking to our friend is not a true happiness. If it was a true happiness, the more we talk to him, the more happy we would be, right? It's just a temporary, right? A temporary relief of the discomfort of feeling alone or feeling bored. And then the satisfaction of that doesn't last, and then we search for something else, and that brings us some temporary satisfaction, and then something else, and something else, and something else, and we're never addressing the real root of the problem, and we're not putting effort into the true causes of happiness, right? Which are cherishing others, right? Positive karma. I'm not saying that we're not doing that, but we're constantly pursuing the temporary pleasures, which are just the suffering of change. And oftentimes we invest so much hope into those temporary things, those sufferings of change, that if we put so much hope in there, we have a lot of pain and disappointment when they fail to give us what we really want, right? When they fail to make us happy, right? Put so much hope into that relationship that falls apart or becomes less satisfying, or put so much hope into that job that then, right, just that's political and doesn't give us lasting satisfaction. Put so much hope into that house that we then have to pay the mortgage and, right, repair, and then it, and then we're afraid of earthquakes and things like that, right? So we're constantly putting, right, so much hope and energy into something that can't bring us lasting happiness. And so the suffering of change are those things that cannot bring us lasting happiness, that are disguised as happiness, but are just giving us some temporary relief from another discomfort or pain. And then the pervasive compounded suffering, right, that everybody is experiencing all the time, of being under the control of afflictions and karma, and therefore have an underlying dissatisfaction or unsatisfactoriness or incompleteness all the time, and are constantly needing to reach out, right, and check our phones and get on Facebook and see how many likes our post has, and see how many text messages we have, right? There's like this, that's an escape from this kind of underlying unease that we have, that comes basically from the fundamental ignorance of, believing in a concrete, inherently existent me. So with the compassion, right, really the deeper our understanding of those three kinds of suffering, the more compassion we have for all beings, all these beings who are suffering without control, we'll say it that way. So the Tonglen, so we're getting in touch with their suffering, then we imagine taking that away from them into our heart, destroying the self-cherishing, and then giving out whatever they need, right? Happiness, liberation, healthy body, a nice cup of coffee, right? Whatever they need. And then taking on their suffering, and giving out happiness, joy, comfort, health, etc. So we're generate compassion, love, compassion, love, compassion, love. So the Tonglen is taking the place of the love and compassion in the sevenfold cause and effect. And then the extraordinary attitude, taking responsibility to free others from suffering, or all beings from suffering, and then Bodhicitta. Right? So shall we do a meditation on the 11 point? So this will be a long meditation, because there's a lot of... Yeah, let's do a stretch.
Sorry.
All right. So let's meditate. So we'll sit in our meditation posture and spend the first few moments just settling the mind and focusing on the breath. with a comfortable, relaxed posture and an alert mind as best as we can. So then in front of us, let's visualize 3 groups of beings. One group of our loved ones, our friends, our family, those we really care about. Then another group of the difficult ones, those who we have aversion to or have hurt us, who we find annoying or awful. And it can include people, it can include insects and cockroaches. And then the third group is everyone else that doesn't bring up strong attachment or aversion. So all people, animals, etc. that belong in the neutral being category. Let's spend a few moments just reflecting on the friend, loved ones category and why we care about them, why they're our friends, loved ones. And is it because they've been good to us? They've been kind to us or attentive? And they make us happy? And then looking at the difficult beings category and examining why they're in the enemy, quote unquote, enemy category. Is it because they've done something to interfere with my happiness? And then the neutral beings, why are they in that category? Is it because they haven't helped or nor harmed us? Or some other reason? And then reflect on the changeability of the friends, enemies, and strangers, or neutral beings. That the beings in those categories is not fixed. How those that are in the friend category were once in the neutral beings category. Maybe someone who once was a friend is now in the neutral category, or even in that enemy or difficult person category. How enemies become neutral and maybe even friends. So the beings in those categories is not fixed. And if we take into consideration the possibility of beginningless lifetimes, then all beings have equally been our friend, a neutral being, and a difficult person. So then it doesn't make any sense then to have attachment to some, aversion toward others, and indifference toward the others. And also, all are the same, all are equal in wanting to be happy and not wanting suffering, wanting things to go well for them, wanting to be cared about, seen, appreciated. not wanting pain and problems, not wanting to be mistreated or treated as if they don't matter. And then consider if it's true that we've had beginningless lifetimes. We've had countless mothers or countless beings who've cared about us, who've put our needs in front of their own. Who worried about us and taken care of us when we couldn't take care of ourselves. Who've given up their dreams for us, sacrificed for us. Lost sleep for us. And where are those beings now? Can we say with certainty that any particular being has never been our mother, or has never taken care of us like that? We're only alive today. We're only where we are today due to the kindness of countless others. How can we repay that kindness? The best way is to help them achieve lasting happiness, peace of mind, genuine joy, freedom from samsara. And equalizing oneself with others, so seeing all sentient beings in our mind's eye. On one side and ourselves on the other. And each and every one of those beings wants to have happiness just as much as we do. and does not want suffering, just like us. We are the same in that way, on that very fundamental level. How could our happiness be more important than that of all those countless others? And thinking about the disadvantages of the self-centered mind. The self-centered mind is what brings about our fear, our anxiety, our attachment and our anger, our jealousy, all of our agitated minds. It causes us to create negative actions, unkind speech, as well as negative actions of body, which brings about future difficult circumstances and pain, as well as agitation and disturbance in our mind in the moment. A self-centered mind is what creates our conflicts with others, conflicts between countries, disharmony at home and disharmony at work. The self-centered mind is a burden that we carry, a heaviness. It's always needing to get what we want. It makes us tense and fearful. Whereas cherishing others brings joy, a freedom from the burden of self-centeredness, the burden of what about me? Cherishing others brings a sense of meaning, happiness, genuine happiness, fulfillment, connection with others, making others feel cared for and loved and safe. So deciding, to exchange ourselves and others, to cherish others more and more, cherishing others as our primary concern in life. and counteracting our self-centeredness again and again. Imagining starting with our loved ones. And we can start with one of our loved ones who's going through a hard time. Maybe illness or stress or depression, anxiety. Really getting in touch with their suffering. And breathing in and imagine taking away all of their anxiety, their pain, their difficulty, their depression. Seeing the relief on their face. And breathing out, giving them whatever they need. Safety, peace of mind, money, job, healthy body. Breathing in and taking away their pain, their anxiety, their illness, their depression, their stress. Breathing out and giving them peace of mind and joy and happiness and safety. Expanding that out to others, breathing in all of others' pain and suffering and depression and anxiety. Breathing out happiness and joy and safety and good health. Breathing in and taking away others' hunger and anxiety and stress and illness and pain. Breathing out and giving them happiness and joy and food and safety, shelter, love. Breathing in and including even the difficult beings. Breathing in and taking away their stress and their anxiety and their pain and their fear, their illness. Breathing out love and safety and peace of mind and happiness. Breathing in and taking away all of their future suffering, their old age and their sickness, their fear of death. Breathing out and giving them peace of mind, open heart, love. Breathing in and taking away all the sufferings of all sentient beings in many, many different forms. Their mental suffering, their physical suffering, their anxiety, their pain, their fear, their heartbreak, their grief, feelings of betrayal, feelings of loneliness, isolation. Breathing out happiness, joy, love, well-being, good health, and all that they need. so much pain in the world. So much suffering, gross and subtle. I myself want to free them from that suffering, that pain. I myself am willing to do it. And yet, I'm limited now. I don't have the wisdom to know how to help. I don't have the skillful means to know the right thing to say and when to say it. I'm so limited with my single body and my mind that still has mental afflictions. So how can I really be of benefit to others in the best possible way? How can I free others from suffering forever? How can I, who am not yet enlightened, liberate others from suffering? I myself need to attain complete enlightenment. In order to bring all beings to that state beyond sorrow. So then Lama Tsongkhapa talks about how it's appropriate to put effort in using many different methods to develop bodhicitta. It's not an overnight prospect, right? We need to keep working at it again and again, he says, continuously. And also accumulate merit and purify obscurations. Yeah. So doing our Vajrasattva practice and our prostrations, etc., right, will help in this practice. And then continue our training in between sessions as well as in session as much as we can. And then the bodhicitta is something that we make effort in and that will deepen until we become Buddhas, right? So all along the path, it gets deeper and deeper. Hopefully, right? And then I wanted to end with a Lama Tsongkhapa quote from Lama Chenmo. It's on the front page of the handout. It says, "Rely on an excellent teacher and make an effort to practice. studying and reflecting, etc., upon the Mahayana scriptural collection and plant the root for the development of bodhicitta from the depths of your heart, not forced by others, nor mindlessly following others, nor through the habit of custom, but through your own strength. Okay. That's it.
That's good.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for helping me review this bodhicitta subject, and yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's helpful for me to have to teach this. As Paul and I were talking about earlier, like I feel like I'm the one who benefits the most, you know. So thank you for helping me remind me of bodhicitta. And all the best, you know, good luck with your bodhicitta practice.